Today's podcast is sponsored by strawberry.me. Feeling stuck or like life's all over the place? Maybe you're ready to move forward, but don't know where to start. Working with a coach at strawberry.me could be the turning point you need. Here's why coaching might be right for you. First, you find clarity. If you're struggling to know what to focus on, a coach can help you sort through the noise and get clear on what matters most to you. Next, set goals that aren't just random, but rooted in your values and purpose. Then you build a plan. Your coach will work with you on a realistic step-by-step path to close the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And finally, stay on track. Your coach will keep you accountable, motivated, and moving forward, even when life gets in the way. As you know, I'm a big believer of coaching and will always encourage you to check it out as a resource to help you reach your goals. Are you ready to start? Visit strawberry.me/noise to take a quick quiz and find your perfect coach. Plus, get 20% off your first month. That's strawberry.me/noise.
We can see where the most painful parts of our life have led us to the next level. That's another muscle. It's a muscle of trusting that no matter what happens, number one, I have the capacity to handle it, so I don't need to worry about it and ward it off. And number two, whatever happens, it's either going to take me to the next level or the next lesson.
You're listening to Make Some Noise Podcast, episode number 641 with guest Joanna Kleinman. Welcome to Make Some Noise Podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you're here. If you're listening to this in real time, you know that we are headed towards the end of the year. And I don't know how you feel during this time of year. Some of you love it. Some of you feel like it's too hectic. I know for me, I don't know if I have either of those feelings. I just am kind of glad that maybe another year is going by and we can set our sights on a new year. And if that is you, if you're the type of person who's like, what do I want to do this year? Do I want to kind of use January as a jumping off point to change my life, make some changes, feel better, do better? Coaching might be for you. This sounds very infomercially. I didn't mean for it to sound this way, really, but I have some openings for private coaching. And I know that the new year can really bring forth that inspiration and that motivation that you might need in order to have it feel like a fresh start and to make some changes. So if that's you, let's have a conversation and head on over to andreaowen.com/links. And that's where you'll see really anything that you need that we talk about here. My books are there, but the page to read about my coaching as well as fill out an application is there. And it doesn't obligate you to do anything really, except fill it out. And then we can have a conversation and I can tell you if coaching is right for you. I can tell you specifically if coaching with me is right for you. That's really what those conversations are about. So andreaowen.com/links. Let's talk about today's guest. We're talking about the inner critic. Again, I know it's a topic that I will never stop talking about, just in terms of how you speak to yourself. Are the conversations that you have with yourself, are they empowering or are they defeating? Are they critical? I think all of us, even me who's done this work for years and years and years, still have moments where we have to check ourselves a little bit in terms of our self-talk. That's why I have another guest on to talk about this. And I think I even mentioned this in the intro when we start talking. I like having guests on that talk about the same things that I do because sometimes you need to hear it from somebody else in order for it to resonate. So before we jump in, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. Joanna Kleinman is a renowned psychotherapist, leadership coach, and best-selling author who empowers coaches, psychologists, and healers with her innovative M.I.N.D Method. Joanna specializes in helping those who feel burned out, stressed, and unfulfilled in critical areas of their lives, whether it's family, career, confidence, health, or overall well-being. So without further ado, here is Joanna. Joanna, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it is my pleasure.
I'm so excited to be for you to be here because I was mentioning that I've been talking about the inner critic since probably 2010, and it's one of those things that is so universal. I remember I've told my audience this before. The first time I ever was sort of made aware of its existence was at coach training in 2008. And I was sitting in this conference room, and I remember the instructors talking about it. And I was like, wait a minute. You mean like this isn't my ultimate truth? Like, you mean I have the power to manage this thing? And I was sold. I'm like, help me.
Right.
And I do talk about it a lot, but I'm always happy to have experts on. And this is your thing.
It's
So
my jam. Yes.
it's your jam.
Yes.
All right. So let's jump in. You talk a lot about breaking free from it. So can you just let's start from the very beginning and just briefly talk about what happens? The audience is primarily women.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when we don't, when we ignore this and just sort of let's just, learn about something else instead? What can people expect?
Okay. So, I guess where I want to start is part of why I call my work dethroning your inner critic is because we can never really break free from this.
Thank you.
Right?
Amen.
You can't really, we can't even change it. So what I call the inner critic is really our automatic conditioned mind. So every human being has a part of themselves that's been conditioned really starting in very early childhood. So we carry these beliefs, these thoughts, these ideas about who we're supposed to be and who other people are supposed to be and how life is supposed to be and how they're supposed to, how other people are supposed to think about us, right? Particularly as women, how we're supposed to be as women, as mothers, as business owners, you fill in the blank, right?
Right.
So, the thing that is so frustrating for so many people is that they just want to silence the voice, quiet the voice, make the voice go away, make the voice stop saying what it's been saying for forever. And you can't. What I want people to understand is that you are actually not the voice in your mind, right? The voice in your mind speaks to you. I mean, research says it's like 60 to 80,000 times.
Yeah. Thoughts a day.
So it's just like our body breathes for us. We don't think about that. Our body makes our heart beat for us. We don't ever think about that. Our minds just go. And if we can develop the capacity, really the conscious muscle to just observe what it's saying, right? So this is what I say to people, what is your automatic mind saying? And not just what is it saying, but why? Why is it getting triggered? What is underneath your fear, your doubt, your insecurity, your worry, your anger, right? All of those emotions that kind of wreak havoc on our nervous system.
I love that I can't remember what the context was that you said, but you said something about conscious something. And that's so much of for the beginning of the work. And I tell people sometimes that's the hardest part. Like when you rip the covers back and really notice and pay attention to the thoughts, it just feels like shit. It's like, don't you think that's the hardest part?
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, where a lot of people stop.
Well, yes. And the reason why we stop there is because, now let me just explain how this inner critic first comes on the scene for all of us. Okay. And and again, this is universal. This is all human. So anybody that says, I don't have an inner critic, they're not really understanding themselves on a deeper level. Okay. So for every human being, there comes a time, and it happens early in our life, where in some way something's wrong. Okay. Some way we feel not okay. We feel judged or like we're not good enough, right? It usually happens by the age of like 6.
Pretty young.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as a young girl, okay, whatever that is, and it doesn't have to be anything traumatic, okay, but whatever
Right.
that feeling is, it actually kicks off this primitive biological mechanism within us, okay? Because listen, our brain and nervous system is really designed for one thing, and that's survival. If we're looking at our primitive brain, we're animals, okay?
Yeah.
So, back in cave woman times, we were part of small tribes. And if we weren't accepted or valued by that tribe, we were dead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It
So
meant literal death.
literal death.
Yeah.
So to a little girl, getting a sideways glance from a parent, or, being yelled at for spilling milk. Number one, we don't understand that person is having a difficult day. They have bills that are unpaid, or they just got into a fight, or, there's so many things that go on for humans that as children, we don't know. So we personalize that, right? And that forms not, so here's the thing that's so interesting, Andrea. It doesn't just form our fear and doubt and insecurity. What also happens in that moment, and it's all very unconscious, is that in that moment, we decide, we make a very unconscious decision. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be? And what do I need to control to ensure that I never feel that degree of pain again?
Mm-hmm.
So we become the smart one. We become the people pleaser. We become the overachiever, or maybe we become the underachiever, right? Because, I'm not even going to try, because I'm not going to put myself in the position of, failure or inadequacy. There's so many different ways that major parts of our personality are formed. And that gets reinforced over the course of our life. So much so that by the time we're adults, let's say we become the people pleaser, we become the overachiever, we've gotten a lot of success from it.
Right. It works until it doesn't, is what I tell people.
Oh, yes. The one thing I want to say about that is it works until it doesn't, but we keep doing it.
Right, exactly. And then wonder, I mean, this was what you just explained was the whole genesis of why I wrote How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, is because when people say, oh, but I don't really feel like shit. And I'm like, let me explain. This is all the habits, like what you mentioned. It's the people pleasing, the overachieving, the perfectionism,
Yeah.
the numbing out, the isolating, blaming, controlling. It's the behaviors that we do in order to try to avoid shame, essentially, which is really the inner critic is on the path. There's a direct line. And they work until they don't. And then when they don't, it feels like shit. But you're absolutely right. Like, we continue to do them because it's all we know, and like keep hoping that it's going to work.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
Well, it's especially exhausting because for many women, for many people, okay, but I will say particularly for women, we get to this point in our lives where we've actually checked a lot of the boxes that we set out to accomplish. We've gotten to the height of our career, or we've raised successful children, or and we look around at all the things that we thought would fill that void and make us feel enough. And there are so many women, I'm sure you come across them all the time in your work, on paper. I mean, they're at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Like, you look at these women on paper and they have everything. I mean, we just have to, we can even just look at Hollywood for that, right? The most beautiful, I'm going to put in quotes, successful people on the planet. And meanwhile, they're miserable and they're overdosing and their marriages are falling apart because that inner critic can push you to your success, but there's a tremendous cost.
There's a tremendous price to be paid. I 100% agree. And when we need to take a quick ad break, but when we get back, I want to focus on solution because I know that that's largely a lot of the work that you do. And I never want to spend a whole podcast episode just talking about the problem. So I will be right back, everyone. We're going to talk about solutions. So be right back. In those moments where money isn't moving as fast as your dreams are, Earnin provides the financial momentum you need to keep moving forward. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for things like early holiday gifts, a personal growth retreat, an unexpected trip to the vet, or maybe a sudden expense with one of your kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast. When you sign up, it really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Okay, I would love to spend a few minutes talking about self-compassion. So, can you tell us, like, what are some misconceptions? Because I think when people hear that word, they're like, "Oh, Jesus, here we go."
Yeah. Right.
What are the misconceptions that you see?
Well, I think it's really hard to have self-compassion until you've really learned to find peace and acceptance of every single facet of yourself, particularly the parts of you that you've spent your whole life wanting to hide from other people.
So what does that look like?
First of all, I think it looks like using your pain for what it's intended for.
Okay. Ooh, say more about that.
Our pain is actually our greatest teacher. And if we, so here, kind of go back to what I was talking about before, where we are hardwired to avoid pain and seek out pleasure, right? Which is why we always want to just feel the good parts of life. The numbing and the avoiding and the overcompensating and all the stuff we do to try to numb or block or run away from the pain, that which you resist persists.
Correct.
Right? So if you're willing to actually turn towards your pain, and what I often talk about is talk to your pain as though it's a trusted friend. What are you here to teach me? What are you here to show me? What are these ideas about myself and my life that have been stifling me and keeping me stuck in this feeling like no matter who I am and no matter what I do, I'm just not enough. And if we can, really what that is creating an entirely new relationship with yourself. So right now, we've got an automatic relationship with ourselves that we don't even think about. And again, it's predicated on this old automatic mind that keeps, see, we think we're having new thoughts every day, right? We think,
Right.
right, we're not. So if you start to look at a pattern, okay, I have this thing going on with my husband or my boss, but guess what? I had a 28-year-old version of this same emotion and this, right? And these same behaviors. I had an 18-year-old version of it. I had a 12-year-old version of it. I have a 7-year-old version of it, right?
Yes.
Now, what we can start to do is notice the trigger, right? So you were talking about solutions. I mean, I think the best way for me to get into this is I created the M.I.N.D method for exactly this reason. You've got to be able to create the space between ourselves and our automatic mind. And the M.I.N.D method is an acronym. I'll talk about it super quick. I mean, there's a lot of, there's so many different nuances.
Yeah.
The M step is to meet your inner critic. That is meeting your automatic mind. What's it saying? Why is it saying it? Who triggers it? What triggers it? The I step, investigate the indication signs. I call those the blinking red lights. Those are the emotions and the behaviors. When you just want to draft that nasty email, or you give somebody the finger when you're driving, or you want to down the whole bottle of wine, or
just completely ignore a situation and run away from it. Yeah.
Yes, right? Overwork, over exercise, stay busy, all of those things, those are indication signs.
Yeah.
The N step is neutralize the never-ending message. So the never-ending message is when we turn towards that pain and we really understand, what are you running away from? What are you numbing? What is it that you're so afraid to feel? And to your point, it's always some version of shame.
Yeah.
And if we can let that shame come up and examine it and unpack it and start to recognize the stories that we've mistaken for truths, the things, the evidence that we've gathered over the course of our life to support this shame. And once we start poking some holes in it, we start to recognize, wait a minute, there's so much evidence in my life that negates that truth.
Yeah.
But, we have this part of our brain, right? The reticular activating system, for one, that has us only pay attention to the parts of life that support some of those deeply held beliefs. So we've gathered all this information, and yet we've ignored all of this other, all this other parts of ourselves and our lives that don't support that.
It's like a really experienced attorney.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Gathers all the evidence and presents it.
Oh my God, that's so brilliant. That's so
without
brilliant.
even you knowing.
That's right. So the D step is design your life. And what that entails is when you ongoingly use the steps, the M step, the I step, and the N step, to really start to see the patterns. Now you put your inner critic right here. I know you can't see the video, but you put your inner critic right on the palm of your hand, right? You give her a name. And you say, oh, I see you. Oh, I know who you are. I know why this emotion is coming up. I know why I'm triggered. That's my, I'm not fill in the blank enough, right? Or right, really start to understand exactly what this is. And the more that you practice it over time, the more in the moment you're able to unhook yourself from her.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the self-compassion. I mean, that's the part of it. I just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. So you were talking about self-compassion. It's really hard, if not impossible, to experience self-compassion if you are continuing to believe that your automatic mind speaks the truth about who you are. And in my opinion, self-compassion is really about the understanding that we all have this machinery, right? That we're all so much more alike than we are different. And so when you start to recognize and own what I'll call your own human machinery, you can actually not just have that room and that space for your own humanity, you can actually extend that to other people, right? Even if they're being jerks, even if, I could use another term, right? But right, we can see that what's really going on for other people is their pain is causing them to behave in ways towards us. It doesn't mean we have to accept it, but we don't have to personalize it
and internalize it.
Yeah.
Okay. I love everything you just said. And I wanted to underscore a couple of things and add one thing.
Yeah.
One of my underscores comes from my favorite Pema Chodron quote. And I can't remember which book I quoted her. And she says, only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found.
Love it.
And when you talked about, looking at the emotions that we're afraid of, like I thought of that quote and I'm like, oh, I have to say it. I'm going to say it again. Yeah. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. And you might think like, well, annihilation is pretty dramatic. And my first response is like, have you met me? I love that because sometimes the feelings that our inner critic is attached to and trying to protect us from can feel like annihilation. And that's why we avoid them. And so there's that. And then also like, I love a good acronym. I love it. The M.I.N.D Method. You're essentially rewiring your brain, and right. I mean, that's one on neuroplasticity. And like, that's the exciting part. Like, is that like, this is science backed, you guys, like what you're describing is like, you create a pattern interrupter from those automatic thoughts that happen every goddamn day. And then you slowly work to design new thoughts. And then I want to say this one last thing is that, because I think people can have a misconception about like what it looks like on the other side. And I'm curious if this is sort of your conclusion too, having worked on this for years and continuing to work on it.
Yep.
And I love that in the beginning you said, this isn't about eliminating these thoughts. It's about, dethroning them. What it looks like for me in my life is that yes, I hear them. They happen less often than they used to. And I think part of that just comes with age and wisdom and confidence and like life experience. Sure. And also, doing this for a living. It's helpful.
Yes.
But what I see now that happens is when they happen, because they do, I recognize them immediately.
Yep.
They still feel terrible, but I recognize them immediately. Instead of just having them be unconscious, they are conscious. And then I don't beat myself up for beating myself up, because that can happen. But the gap is a lot smaller between hearing and noticing the thoughts. And then I call it course correcting, which sounds like that's your D part, the designing, where I just, I think neutral thoughts about it. And I don't do positive affirmations because my mind is like, that's bullshit. Yeah. But it's just, the gap is so much shorter between when I hear them and the course correction, because previously that used to be days, weeks. And I would stay there and then base my behavior and my feelings around those negative thoughts. So I'm curious if that's your experience too. I don't think I've ever asked anybody that.
1,000,000%.
Okay.
And absolutely. I think what you're describing is, I think I've built a much stronger muscle for being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right?
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's this.
I can lift some weights with that.
I mean,
the discomfort.
For sure. Living a conscious and deliberate and intentional life is uncomfortable.
Yes, it is.
right? You have to, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone all the time. You're needing to speak your truth. You're needing to let go of relationships that don't serve you or behaviors that don't serve you. I'm creating and designing things in my life that are bringing me way outside of my comfort zone. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, and I'm feeling it in my nervous system every single day. And my inner critic is whipping up, all the worst case scenarios and the things that could go wrong and the things that could fail in my whole journey, and we could say in my professional journey or my journey for raising my children or my journey in my 27-year marriage. You can't really separate, right, those three different areas.
They bleed together.
Yeah, it's the same inner critic that shows up. It continues to show up, but I don't go down the rabbit hole of engaging in the fear, the doubt, the worst case scenarios. And that allows me to be way more present in my life, which has changed it's changed everything in my life. And not only has it changed everything in my life, it's actually changed the lives of the people that are most important to me, right? When I show up differently, when I show up in my ability to remain present and calm and centered and not triggered into my anxiety, I'm a different wife towards my husband. I'm a different mother towards my children. I'm kinder to myself, right?
Yeah.
And so I engage in different behaviors that literally creates a different reality that I'm living.
Yeah. I want to say this one last thing, and then we need to take a quick break again. When people ask me if there's like one personal growth tool that you would tell people to go after, I always answer it this way. I would say, I can't pick one, but I can pick two. And they are managing your thoughts, working on that inner critic, and values, which they are like sisters. Like they complement each other so much, and you can't have one without the other. And those are my two things. I mean, that's why I get fired up about this topic. We'll be right back. And when we get back, I want to talk to you about self-trust. So we'll be right back, everybody.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting. Go to your happy place for a happy price with Priceline's Black Friday sale. Save now and travel later with our best deals of the year.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
You talk about moving away from constantly seeking either external validation from people or even just counsel. I know I've been in those places where it's like, I don't trust my own decisions and my own thoughts. And how do you advise people to start trusting their own, what you call inner wisdom?
Yeah, I love that. So I truly do believe that our inner wisdom is actually not, it doesn't even live in our minds. It lives in our heart.
Yes.
Right. The way that I have people sort of look at this is starting to feel into the energy inside of their body. Because when you are making a decision about something and you are stuck in what we could call fear-based thoughts.
Like the ruminating, you mean?
The ruminating,
Mhm.
the trying to, get answers from everybody as to what's the right thing, going back and forth, indecisiveness,
yes.
right? All of that. Okay. It feels very constricted inside of your body. This is not easy work. But if you are willing to get quiet and to really go down deeper and put your hands right on your heart and just ask the question, what is my inner truth? It's always going to be right there within seconds. You might not want to hear it.
Yeah.
Right?
Word.
Sometimes our inner truth brings us face to face with what is the complete unknown, right?
Or something incredibly uncomfortable, like leaving a relationship or leaving a job.
That's what I'm talking about.
Setting a boundary.
That's right. That's what I'm talking about. That's the unknown, right? And remember, we're hardwired to want to have predictability, certainty, control. And there's a paradox here. The more that we live our life trying to control the future, trying to predict and script how life is going to unfold, it actually fuels our anxiety, our fear, our doubt, our overwhelm, our insecurity. Going back to what you said about trust, here's something that is interesting about if we kind of look at the whole journey of life. From wherever you are in your life, you can probably look back at some really shitty, painful things that have happened. And once you have some perspective, you might even be able to say, you know what? That taught me the most profound lesson that I needed to learn. Or thank God that job didn't work out. Thank God I got kicked out of that school, right? We can see where the most painful parts of our life have led us to the next level.
Right.
And that's another muscle, is to develop this ability. And it's a hard muscle that I am still working out and will be for the rest of my life. But it's a muscle of trusting that no matter what happens, number one, I have the capacity to handle it, so I don't need to worry about it and ward it off. And number two, whatever happens, it's either going to take me to the next level or the next lesson. That's what trusting the flow of life is about. And again, this is also a quote from Pema Chodron, reminded me, right? She says, like, I don't remember the whole quote, but she said something to the effect of, like, your house is going to burn down. You are going to get cancer. Somebody in your life is going to die. Like, that's going to happen. And your ability to be able to just flow with all of it instead of trying to, cherry pick life so you only feel the good parts. If you can be with all of it, now you're free.
That is true freedom. Like, I need a moment after that. I appreciate every word of what you said. And I'm almost positive that both of those quotes that we said are from When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. So we'll drop that link to that book in the show notes. And I don't know about you, but I have had an absolute street fight with that.
Woo. Yes.
So my dad died in 2016 and I got the word surrender tattooed on my arm in my own handwriting. And I honestly think that choice to get that tattoo was from my inner wisdom because it was an interesting choice. Like, and also it was a word, and its meaning to me was not one that this was a hard one lesson, and I haven't totally won it yet. I don't know if we ever really do as human beings. But it's been interesting in the last 8 years to sort of watch how surrendering or the need to surrender has shown up in my life.
Yes.
Based on various work projects that have happened, and especially in relationships, whether they are platonic relationships or the relationships with my children or the relationships with my now former husband. It's been a wild ride, Joanna. Like, and I'm about to turn 50 in less than 6 months now. And I'm like, okay, this is my Chiron returning. Like this, the surrendering into self-trust. But I'm going to tell you this, like another thing that I've embarked on, and my audience is familiar with this because I have a special podcast about it, is psychedelic therapy. And that is one of the things, the lessons that I have really, the street fight is slowly coming to an end.
Yes.
And I can tell you that I want to just emphasize the last thing that you said around freedom. And I feel like true personal freedom and sovereignty has come from that, has come from radical acceptance, radical surrendering into trusting myself. And I want to underscore one more thing that you said that is so important for women to hear around trusting your own future resilience.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Because that thing, and as an anxiety girl myself, I think that that's the part of the ruminating that we don't fall into. Yeah. And that's what I ask people if like I'm on a coaching call with them. It's like, okay, well, let's just say like worst case scenario happens. You know, like let's just say your marriage falls apart. Like let's say you lose your job. Let's say you file for bankruptcy. Like, would you be able to recover?
Yes. Yes. Right. And that,
I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
Nope. But that question, Andrea, is an incredibly important and profound question, because we really do, you know, again, that thing that we're avoiding and we don't want to feel, if we're willing to go to the worst possible fear and really know in our, right, just in our bones that we'll be okay, then we don't need to keep looking at it, worrying about it, trying to prevent it. I wasn't prepared to even talk about this, but you mentioned psychedelic therapy. This was something that I didn't even know that I was going to be doing. But right after my father died, I did ayahuasca.
I was going to say, did you do ayahuasca?
I sure did.
Did you have any previous experience with
psychedelics?
You went for the jugular.
I mean, I had even had like a mushroom journey, like nothing.
You guys can't see me right now, but my mouth just like fell on my desk. Would you mind sharing just briefly like what that experience was like? And what was your goal? Like, did you have a goal going in?
Ayahuasca it's interesting. They say that it calls you, right?
Yes.
It came up. Somebody I knew was going to do it. And I just like immediately knew I was supposed to do it. And I was petrified, absolutely terrified all the way up until doing it. I mean, I think the goal was that I just knew that I wanted more freedom from the inner struggle. I didn't really know what to expect. And it was vastly, what came up was vastly different than anything that I expected. But
they say to not have like specific expectations, just like trust the process, like whatever you're going to see is eventually going to be helpfing.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to be honest, looking back, there was an arrogance at the time because I'm like, well, I've been engaged in self-help like since I've been 9 years old, and
a little chip on your shoulder.
I know my inner being, like I've done all this work, and like I think I'll see some really cool stuff, but I don't think that it'll be like that deep and dark. And I was wrong. I was wrong. But here's what was incredibly powerful about it is that it did bring me face to face with the deepest, darkest fears. And that was basically fears around my business and my kids, right? You can, right? Like there's just horrible things happening. That in and of itself, you don't need to go and do ayahuasca, right? But just to be willing to go to those depths of the worst possible things that you could think of, and even doing that inner work to understand that that you're not going to fall apart. Like you
Mhm.
are going to be okay no matter what happens, gives you the ability to really expand your trust in the whole journey of life.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the pain that it's amazing. It's like if we can't feel the depth of pain, we can't really feel the full depth of joy either. We've got to be willing
I
to
agree with that.
fully embrace and own the pain before we can experience the level of joy that we really want.
I love that so much. I want to just add one more thing because I could talk to you all day, but we do have to wrap up soon. The last thing you said about embracing so I got sober 13 years ago, and that sort of like really kicked off my journey around just true recovery. There's a difference between sobriety and recovery. Like recovery is all about emotions essentially.
Yes.
And some trauma thrown in on the side. And I think that over the last almost decade and a half now of discovering and rediscovering who I am with all of my emotions has allowed me to face more presently in the last handful of years the really difficult things that I've been through. One of those things is the separation and soon to be divorce of my second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was annihilated me. It was like one of the biggest heartbreaks of my life. Married for 15 years and it came to an end. And I also think, so that was about 18, as we're recording this, about 18 months ago that we decided to end our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now at the place, like over the summer, I had a realization where I was like, oh, well, I'll find love again. Like I will fall in love again. Like I know that I will. And it wasn't that I was like, oh, I'm ready to find someone or I'm in who wants me to fall in love with them. Like it wasn't like that, but it just was this sort of like surrendering to the understanding and the acceptance of the joy of falling in love. That I don't think I could. And people ask me, like, I'll go on dates with people who've, had like multiple breakups or who have also been married and divorced twice. And they'll ask, like, do you think you'll ever get married again? And I'm like, yeah. Wouldn't I want to fall madly in love with someone again? Like, It is like there are so many experiences that bring us joy in life. And like falling in love is up there.
Yeah.
Sure. And grief and sadness are the price that we pay either through breakups or death when we fall in love. So all that to say, like, I just wanted to underscore what you were saying around emotions. And I never truly understood what it looked like when people were like, even when Brene Brown talks about, you can't just like selectively numb and you have to feel all of it to really feel it. And I was like, oh, now I get it. Like I had to fully surrender into the grief and the loss and the deep, deep sorrow of not just losing my marriage, but losing my dad 8 years ago and going through difficult things with friendships and all of that to get to a place where I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to fall in love again. Like I'm here for it.
The courage that you're talking about to let leave what is no longer in alignment with who you are and who you are becoming, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if what you're saying is that your attention, your conscious attention is on joy and love. Yeah. And so if that relationship is no longer in alignment with that, as scary as it is, we've got to let the things leave, right? Any part of our life, we've got to let them leave to make room and space for what is in alignment with who we now are and what we're designing moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which goes back to what you were saying around how we sort of, I call it like we screen the calls of our inner wisdom, like because we're like, nope, that if I listen to that, then I might have to do something really uncomfortable. But that's it's all in the path to self-love or to self-trust. Again, I could talk to you all day, but before we end and you tell people where to go to find more about you, is there anything that you want to circle back to underscore or add to make sure that you feel complete?
The only thing that comes to mind, I use the analogy of this book very often. There's a Sesame Street book called There's a Monster at the End of This Book. Do you know that? Do you know that book?
I don't know that one. And
Oh my God,
I'm of the
it's so good.
Sesame Street generation.
Oh, it's so good. So it's Grover. And
Okay.
right. And Grover's like, please don't turn the page, right? There's a
Oh, I think I know this.
right?
Okay.
And then you keep turning, and then
Yes.
in the middle of the book, he boards up, right? There's like all these boards, and he nailed all the boards, and then you turn the page, and like all the boards fall apart, and the nails are flying everywhere, and he's begging, I told you, please don't turn the page. And then at the end of the book, of course, Grover is the monster. And I think that just encapsulates, like, we're so afraid to see the demons. We're so afraid of that discomfort. But if we would just let ourselves go there, what we're inevitably going to find is that, right, once we let that pain surface and we build capacity to be with it, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And there's so much freedom and joy and love on the other side of your willingness to be able to do that work.
Here. Thank you so much for that, for everything. And so where can people go to find more about you?
You can go to Dethroning Your Inner Critic. That is the name of my book, my podcast. I'm on social media. You can also find me at Mastering Your Mind. I'm actually going to be switching my my website over to Mastering Your Mind, because that's the name of my program for women, and I'm also creating a certification program for people that want to take the M.I.N.D Method into their work. So it's Dethroning Your Inner Critic or Mastering Your Mind.
I love it. We'll put all those links in the show notes, and I follow you on Instagram, and so that will be there as well. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your gifts and your knowledge. And listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate it so much. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans, and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free, and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
No one told us the truth about parenthood. Why? This is the podcast everyone needed before they had kids, because now that those little ones are here, there is a lot to unpack. I'm Rachel Shepardota, and I am your host for the podcast No One Told Us, where we tell the truth about parenting and let you in on all the stuff you really should have known about before having kids. I am the founder of Hey Sleepy Baby, but this podcast is so much more than sleep. We'll be diving into all the topics that you really care about and need to know while you do your best job raising those adorable, tiny humans. Our goal is to just make you feel less alone and less overwhelmed. There are so many things that no one tells us before becoming a parent, and I think that we should really pull back the curtain on becoming a first-time or second-time mom or dad to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll have a little education, a little fun, and a whole lot of heart that goes into each and every episode. So join me and our amazing guests each week to hear us talk about what no one told us.